rescheduling it. So let's see if they can do it.
Just my approach, sir.
They'll get back to me.
One of those.
Oh, yeah. Can you write your email's address? I can get your instructions to you guys as well.
You guys need to just use your.
Oh, yes, sir. I'm writing on here. Okay, you ready for the jury?
Yeah.
You guys ready to go? Okay, fine, go ahead.
I understand that the 2018 death penalty jury instructions are downloadable from the Supreme Court currently, okay? Is that, you guys understanding?
I'm sorry, what did you say?
The current Supreme Court death sentencing jury instructions, the 2018 version are still good law.
Whatever's in the Supreme Court website, I mean,
The Supreme Court doesn't do with jury instructions. They have disowned themselves from having anything to do with it. So I
They've got
don't,
a link.
the Florida bar is in charge of it now, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, they used to be sort of in charge of that, but I think they find themselves having to interpret the things that they've approved and sometimes disapproved. So now they just turn it over to the bar, and the bar committee, I guess, the jury instructions committee makes the proposals and go from there, I guess.
That could well be, I just clicked the link in the Florida Supreme Court website, that's the problem.
I think that's what we use.
Yeah, I've heard that thing that we get sent to 2018 is valid.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
I'm looking at it to see if anything's changed for you.
is this AAB 1?
Yes, sir. I will never use the Roman numeral 1 or 2 consecutive vowels in email ever again in my life.
Okay,
I'm stuck with it now.
all right.
All the changes first,
Yeah.
Jury,
Come in. All right, thank you. Jury's present and seated. State call. Your next witness.
you have to make do with this. Your Honor?
Yes. Did you turn?
Yep.
Judge, the next witness is asking for a bottle of water. Do you have some, or should I go get some from upstairs?
I'll get it.
Thank you, sir.
Raise your right hand, sworn in.
You solemnly swear
sorry.
or affirm that the testimony you shall give in this cause will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth,
Yeah,
so help you God?
yeah. Try to slip. Just watch those 2 steps, have a seat.
Be sure you speak loud and clear, and close to the microphone so they can hear what you have to say, okay?
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Could you please introduce yourself to the jury and spell your last name for the record order, sir?
Yes, my name is Robert Drake, D-R-A-K-E,
Sir, where are you employed?
Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office.
In what capacity?
I'm a detective with the Homicide Unit,
How long have you been a detective with the Homicide Unit?
16 years.
Any prior law enforcement experience?
Yes, I was working 10 years with the City of South Bay. I left there as a sergeant, and prior to that, 2 years in Hallandale Police Department,
So 28 years total?
approximately since 1986.
Fair to say you attended the academy?
I did.
And have you received supplemental training as a law enforcement officer over the past 28 years?
I have, sir.
Were you a detective in the Homicide Division back in March of 2016?
I was.
jumping ahead just a little bit, did you become the lead detective involving a homicide investigation of Rachel Bay?
I did.
What does that mean within your agency to be the lead detective? What responsibilities come with that?
Sure. You really direct the course of the investigation. You coordinate with other detectives, specialized units, and also units outside the agency.
Can you tell the jury how old Miss Bay was?
She would have been 32 on the 16th, a few days after she was murdered.
And where was Miss Bay living at the time that she was killed?
In the city of West Palm Beach.
Based upon your investigation, was Miss Bay seeing anybody at the time of her death?
She had a close friend, Jose Rodriguez.
And was he interviewed as part of your investigation?
He was.
Did he also submit a buccal swab or DNA sample as well?
He did.
Through your investigation, did you learn that Miss Bay was known to engage in prostitution?
I did.
And how did you know that?
Through statements from Mr. Rodriguez, also from, thank you, Your Honor, from her own police records. And also she had a a Backpage advertisement.
Are you familiar with Backpage based upon your professional capacity?
Yes, it was a classifieds, online classifieds section where people could place ads for services and products, and it was closed down by the federal government in 2018.
Based upon your investigation, when was the last time Miss Bay was seen alive?
Sometime before midnight on March 6th by Mr. Rodriguez.
Do you mean Mr. Gonzalez?
No, Mr. Rodriguez, yeah. Mr. Gonzalez, forgive me.
That's all right. I just want to make sure we got it right.
Forgive me. It's been a long day.
We Hispanics, we all sound alike.
Forgive me, Your Honor.
Where was it that she was last seen by him?
At this home in the Pinewood neighborhood of West Palm.
Now, as part of your investigation, did you actually go out to the crime scene the morning she was located?
I did.
Where was this location?
It's about 24.5 miles from where Mr. Gonzalez, Your Honor, lives. That's 1 mile north on Highway 710, which is also known as the Beeline Highway, 1 mile north of Indiantown Road, the town of Jupiter.
What's the area like out there where she was found?
Yes, so there's wildlife areas on each side. It's very rural. No one lives there in that general area. Water management districts on both sides. At the time, the road was being taken from 2 lanes to 4. So there was a really wide graded area, about 24 feet of roadway, and then probably another 12 feet of medium that was being constructed.
And do you know how she was first located?
Yes, there was a survey crew with radar of all things, checking for pipes as they were moving forward on the highway widening. So the road crew found her.
And they called it into police?
Yes, there was actually a trooper down the roadway that was directing traffic, and he responded immediately, probably moments after she was found.
Did that bring multiple officers from your agency to the crime scene?
As soon as the trooper came on scene, we were called.
And when you got out there, was Miss Bay still there?
She was.
Did you have the opportunity to observe her as she lay at the time?
I did.
What did you notice about her?
She was laying face down. Multiple injuries about her body. Her fingernails were broken off. There were some obvious deep abrasions on her toes, consistent with being dragged. And also, when the medical examiner responded and turned her over, her face was severely injured. Teeth were knocked out, or missing rather. Sections of hair looked like they were pulled out.
And you mentioned the feet as if she had been dragged. Did you observe any drag marks out there?
Yes, interestingly, from where her feet lay, there were a set of drag marks about 40 feet to where the existing pavement was, where you would have parked a car. And the marks are very plain to go right to where she's resting.
Were any of Ms. Bay's possessions found out there, clothing, anything like that?
There's no clothing, there's no ID, jewelry, or anything else.
So no way to identify who she was from the crime scene?
At that time, no.
And was she later identified by her fingerprints?
Well, prior to that, Mr. Gonzalez, Your Honor, forgive me, Mr. Gonzalez telephoned. About 2 days later, I believe, the news had been carrying that a woman was found on the Beeline Highway, and I spoke with him, and he gave me, I think this is my friend. At that point, we compared her fingerprints, the 10 print card from the ME's office, through our latent print division, and they confirmed that it was Rachel Bay.
Now, would it be fair to say that the crime scene around Miss Bay was sterile?
Yes, there was simply nothing there but dirt.
Nothing but dirt, so no blood?
No.
Was an autopsy conducted on Miss Bay after she was transported from the crime scene?
Yes,
Did you attend the autopsy?
I did. Dr. Gertrude Just was the doctor.
Is that something you commonly do on your cases? Your agency has an officer attend the autopsy?
Yes,
And did you observe the collection of a sexual assault kit by Dr. Just?
I did.
After the autopsy and Miss Bay was identified, did your investigation kind of proceed on from there?
It did.
Did you have multiple items submitted for forensic analysis from the crime scene and also from the autopsy, from the sexual assault kit?
Yes.
As a lead detective on a case, when you submit things to the lab, are you notified of the results?
Yes.
And in this case, did you receive the findings from your lab?
Yes, in December of that year.
I believe that analysis was done, was that by Ms. Brenner?
It was.
Did she notify you about the DNA that was recovered from the genital swabs?
Yes.
Did she notify you about the DNA that was recovered from the top of the left hand?
Yes.
Now, fast forwarding through up to December of 2016, had your investigation continued with that information? Obviously, you said you got that in late 2016, but had your investigation continued in terms of doing interviews and following up on them?
Yes, contacting people that would live on the street that would be consistent, friends, spoke with her family multiple times, searched out for video, her phone records, etc. Yes.
Did you guys also have billboards put up in the area?
We did. We put a large billboard and several bus benches.
I'm sorry, what was the second thing?
Bus benches.
What's a bus bench?
Be a shelter, and the bus bench would be in there, and there'd be an area about the size of a sheet of plywood that you could put advertisements and also Crime Stoppers ads up.
And up until December of 2016, despite having some significant forensic evidence, had you developed any primary suspects?
Not at that point.
At one moment, Your Honor?
Yes, sir.
Detective, I have no further questions for you. I'll tend to the witness.
Thank you. Any cross-examination? Yes, sir. It's my understanding some of you have birthdays between now and Tuesday. I'll have my wife bake you a cake. She likes bacon.
Mine was yesterday.
I'll bake you 2 cakes, chocolate and vanilla. while the attorneys are conferring, I might as well take up the time to let you know about scheduling. It looks like we're pretty much on track. I think we'll go through the balance of this week. We may not be able to finish the case by the end of this week, but early next week sometime you should plan on probably hearing the closing arguments and jury deliberations, okay? So, and a lot of it has to do with a number of things, but among others is the races that are this week, and then that presents a little bit of a logistical problem for the sheriff if we were to go into deliberations to work, so. Yes, sir.
Very briefly, Your Honor.
Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, Detective.
Good afternoon, sir.
You mentioned that there were photographs up on the, around the city, mostly on bunch benches, I presume you said, or were they billboards as well?
Billboard and the bus bench, yes.
And what did the billboard indicate? What was on it that would call someone's attention to contact the Daytona Beach Police Department?
Not to contact the Daytona Beach Police Department, sir.
Oh, what was it about?
To contact Crime Stoppers with information.
Oh, I see. Do you recall what it said? What was the...
No, I don't. It would have been consistent with the poster that I had in the office.
And what was it? What did that say?
That would have had $5,000 reward, which is standard for Crime Stoppers. A photo of Miss Bay.
He said, how long were they up?
Yeah.
That's a key question.
And how long were they up before you actually contacted Mr. Hayes?
Oh, I don't know how long they were up. I'm sorry. It wasn't immediately.
Could it have been a month or more?
I don't know, sir. I really don't know.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Anything?
Just one quick question, Judge. I meant to ask this initially, Detective. When you got those forensic results from your lab, from Stacy Brenner, were you aware that the DNA she had found had been placed in the combined DNA index system?
Yes, and it didn't come back with a match.
So up until December of 2016, no hits through CODIS?
Correct.
All right, thank you, sir.
All right, thank you. Anything else?
No other redirect, Your Honor.
Thank you. You may step down.
Thank you.
Take the water with you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Judge, he is going to be subject to recall tomorrow.
Okay, so you need to answer to the state attorney's office for the subpoena.
Of course, sir.
Thank you. Next witness, please.
Detective David Dinardi.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you shall give in this cause will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Make sure you speak loud and clear so the viewers can hear what you have to say, okay?
Yes, sir.
State you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Can you please state your entire name, spell your last name for the court reporter?
David Dinardi, D-I-N-A-R-D-I,
And sir, where do you work?
the Daytona Beach Police Department.
And in what capacity are you employed there?
I'm a detective sergeant assigned to the robbery homicide unit.
Are you the supervisor of that unit?
Yes, sir.
And how long have you been a police officer with Daytona Beach?
16 years.
Any prior law enforcement experience?
Yes, prior to my time with the Daytona Beach Police Department, I was a Boston police officer for 9 years.
And prior to being put in charge of the robbery homicide unit, what was your assignment?
I was a detective for 11 years. Prior to that, with the last 7 years being a homicide detective. And then when I was promoted last year, I went to the road as a patrol supervisor for approximately 10 weeks before coming back to the robbery homicide unit.
Back in 2014, 2015, 2016, were you a detective in the robbery homicide unit?
Yes, sir.
And in 2015, were you assigned a cold case involving 3 homicides?
Yes, I was.
And were those the homicides of Iwana Patton, Julie Green, Laquetta Gunther?
Yes, sir.
When you were assigned this case as a cold case, did you review the case files at the Daytona Beach Police Department?
Yes, I did.
Can you give the jury an idea of how voluminous the case files were related to this case?
Yes, it was. It contained a lot of. There was a lot of materials. There was approximately, probably 20, what I refer to as banker boxes. So approximately 20 banker boxes worth of material.
And just generally, I know we're talking about 20 boxes of material. What types of things do those boxes contain?
They contained police reports, lab reports from the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, photographs, leads that were called in from the public or just generated one way or the other.
And going back to how long you've been with the agency, were you with Daytona Beach back in 05, 06 when these homicides occurred?
I began as a patrol officer in January of 2006.
So right at the very beginning.
Yes.
Did you take any significant role in that investigation back in 06?
No, not at all.
And having reviewed those 20 bankers boxes, did you become familiar with the existence of the task force to locate the killer of these 3 women?
Yes, sir.
What agencies were involved in that task force?
The task force was comprised of representatives from the Daytona Beach Police Department, the Volusia County Sheriff's Office, the State Attorney's Office, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and the Florida Department of Law Enforcement.
Did you also become familiar with the LEADS program?
Yes.
What was the LEADS program?
The LEADS program is a program maintained by the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, and it's just a way to categorize and track leads as they come in.
And did the task force essentially, through the LEADS program, follow up on every single lead that they received related to these 3 murders?
Yes, sir.
And having reviewed the case file, what were the 2 most significant evidentiary leads identified during the task force?
The first most significant evidentiary lead is the foreign DNA that was recovered from the first victim, Ms. Gunther's oral cavity, which was consistent with the DNA recovered from the third victim, Ms. Patton.
And over the years, had the task force submitted multiple DNA standards from individuals who they had looked into or persons of interest to FDLE?
Yes, sir.
And to your knowledge, was the foreign DNA from Ms. Gunther that was recovered from her oral swabs entered into the combined DNA index system?
Yes, it was.
And what was the other significant lead?
The other significant lead was that the same firearm was used in Ms. Green and Ms. Patton's homicide.
So that would be the second and third of the 3 murders.
Yes, sir.
And had the task force made efforts to locate the source of those shell casings that matched up?
Yes.
And was that through test firing weapons and things of that nature?
Yes.
When the task force was discontinued, who was the case assigned to?
The case was assigned to a retired Daytona Beach detective by the name of Clem Malik.
And did retired detective Clem Malik, continue to follow up on leads as the years progressed?
Yes, sir.
And over the years of the task force and Detective Malik working on the case, how many swabs are we talking were submitted to the Florida Department of Law Enforcement?
There were several hundred.
Several hundred?
Yes, sir.
Was there ever, to your knowledge, a DNA match from these several hundred swabs that were sent to FDLE?
No, sir.
Now I'm talking about a match to the profile recovered from Ms. Gunther's oral swabs.
Yes, there was no match made.
And was there ever, to your knowledge, in reviewing the case file in 2015, a CODIS hit?
No, sir.
Same question related to firearm and the shell casing. Was there ever a match that you were aware of between a submitted shell casing and the shell casings recovered from the crime scenes of Ms. Green and Ms. Patton?
No, sir. There was no match was ever made.
And after reviewing the case file, and again, this is up through Mr. Malik's work on the case, was there ever, despite these significant evidentiary leads, a viable suspect developed?
No, sir.
Did your review of the case file also include a review of the victims and their backgrounds?
Yes.
We've heard the victims' names many times, but what were their names one last time?
The first victim was Laquetta Gunther. The second victim was Julie Green. And the third victim was Iwana Patton.
Through your review of the case file and crime scene information and the backgrounds of these three women, were there any significant similarities you observed as an investigator?
Yes, sir.
And what were those?
The three victims, they had physical similarities. They were all middle-aged females. They were all pretty similar in height and weight. They were all from frequent the Daytona Beach area. And then the three of them also were known to engage in some type of prostitution.
What about similarities in regard to the crime scenes where they were located? Did you notice anything about that?
Yes, sir. All of the crime scenes were secluded, kind of out-of-the-way areas, if you will.
And what about the cause of death? Was that similar as well?
Yes, the cause of death in each of the three cases was a gunshot wound, a single gunshot wound to the head.
And on any of the three women, was any identification located on them at all?
No, sir.
Now, from the time that you reviewed the case, went through those banker's boxes, and got up to speed on it until December of 2016, did anything significant happen in your investigation?
No, sir.
In December of 2016, did you receive what's commonly known as a CODIS hit regarding the foreign DNA recovered from Ms. Gunther's oral swab?
Yes, sir.
And when you get a CODIS, have you gotten more than one CODIS hit in your career?
Yes.
How do you get notified of a CODIS hit?
Usually get notified from the Florida Department of Law Enforcement of such a hit.
So they send you a letter, or pick up the phone and call you, that type of thing?
It can either be a letter, an email, or a phone call.
Now, did the CODIS hit identify a person that was in CODIS or another case that was in CODIS?
Another case that was in CODIS.
And where was that case out of?
Palm Beach County, Florida.
When you get these CODIS hits, is it pretty limited information they had in there other than the agency and maybe the case number?
Yes.
And after getting that notification from FDLE, did you contact Palm Beach County?
Yes, sir.
Did you speak with investigators in Palm Beach County?
Yes, I did.
Did you review and become familiar with the facts of the related case in Palm Beach County?
Yes, sir.
Was a decision made between your agency, the Daytona Beach Police Department, and Palm Beach County to work in conjunction and together in trying to locate the source of this DNA?
Yes.
And were various strategies discussed between the two agencies?
Yes.
And did it eventually lead to a decision to look into what's commonly known as genetic genealogy?
Yes, sir.
And was that a decision that the two agencies were going to work together in submitting your DNA information from Ms. Gunther to a third party to look into it?
Yes.
And did this decision to go forward and give the genetic genealogy a shot, did it come out of observing anything on TV or any other cases around the country?
Yes, it came out of a high-profile case out of California.
And was that case solved with genetic genealogy?
Yes, it was.
What was the name of the company y'all worked with for the genetic genealogy?
The company that we started with was a private lab called Parabon that was doing the I guess, the science work part.
The laboratory work?
Yes.
And did FDLE later on become involved as well from an investigative standpoint?
Yes.
I have one moment, Your Honor.
Yes, sir.
Detective Dinardi, going into the decision to go forward with the genetic genealogy, what was your rudimentary understanding of how it could be an investigative tool?
My very basic understanding was that, much like when people try to find their ancestors on using these similar websites like Ancestry.com or 23andMe, like if I was to submit my DNA to Ancestry, then I could, when they do the laboratory work, I can see who people that I'm related to that maybe I didn't know, maybe a distant relative or just a relative that I didn't know about. So my understanding was that if we took the foreign DNA from Ms. Gunther, who we've been attempting to identify since 2005, if we were able to submit that to a similar type company, that we could find relatives of the contributor of the foreign DNA found in Ms. Gunther.
And then perhaps research it back to the source of the foreign DNA?
Yes, sir.
And was that Palm Beach County's understanding as well, based upon y'all's decision to go forward with it?
I believe so, yes.
All right, at this time, I'll tender the witness.
All right, any cross-examination? Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, Detective Dinardi.
Good afternoon, Mr. Shea.
Yes, sir, thank you. In going to the genetic genealogy, do you have a familiarity of what procedure they go through in identifying the sample of the swab that's given like, from your mouth normally? Is that correct?
Yes, that is my understanding from the
Yeah.
mouth, yes.
And do you know what they're identifying? Do they identify the DNA, or do they go through a different process identifying what's called the genomes?
I'm not familiar with that. I'm sorry, I can't answer that question.
Okay, so you would not have knowledge then that they're not really confirming the DNA is matching any person. They're only going to check the family line, which could go back many, many years, sometimes even hundreds of years to other continents. Is that correct?
I'd have to defer to the scientist for that.
Okay, I appreciate that, sir. Thank you.
All right, anything else?
No, Your Honor.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
He's also subject to recall.
Okay, you're still under subpoena.
Yes, sir.
That's all
Can
you
we
can
go sidebar, sir?
Huh?
Can we go sidebar with you?
Yeah.
Doesn't need to be on the record.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm gonna go ahead and adjourn for today, a little early day, and we'll resume tomorrow again at 9. Be here about 8:45. Again, reminder, don't discuss the case with anybody, don't do any research on your own, don't Google things or tweet or write a book or anything along those lines. Don't let anybody talk to you about the case, don't talk to anybody about the case.
Witness,
Yes, sir. See you tomorrow morning, 8:45.
Thank you, Judge.
Oh, yeah, you can leave it right there.
Okay.
The bailiff will get it. Be
Thank you.
careful. Okay, the jury's out, so we'll be in recess, okay? Thanks, sir.
Thank you, Judge.
Tomorrow at 8:30, yeah, be here at 8:30, yeah. Can you write down your telephone number here? So if I hear from these folks in Jacksonville, then I can.
Yes, sir. I called my psychologist, Dr. Hayes, this time, to see if anybody else can be done, please. So far, no response.
I'm confident, huh?
that jury's 11:20 tomorrow.
Oh, yeah, yeah, we can do that today.
How long will it take? Check out.
Sherry, which tour number is it? We can get it to them today. Who?